Take back your soul. This is another transmission from Mahadeva here at ThunderWizard.com headquarters, where you find the world's only unified spiritual energy system at ThunderWizard.com. Get ready, because here I come. Hello YouTube, this is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard, and I hope you are doing well this evening. What are we going to talk about tonight? I cannot shake this feeling that we are on the verge of some massive revelation. So we're going to take a look at some reasons why that might be. But before we do that, let me just share with you my feeling about where we're at, and I think a lot of the intensity of it may be something that we can have some interaction with based on our thoughts and our expectations and what you are willing to accept. So imagine, if you will, that you are in a position in time where there are gods and beings and demigods and ascended masters and elves and bodhisattvas and all kinds of entities and powers that are here. You just can't see them. And you can't see them because there's a veil over your eyes. And that veil has been over the eyes of humans for quite some time. And we are in a position now, if we choose to, we can lift the veil. And I want you to imagine it's more than just being able to see, have your third eye open and being able to see spirits. And what if you lived in a world where gods walked among you? That you could see and experience and communicate with beings of all different kinds. That you could experience other dimensions. That you could tap into powers and technologies that we once had, but we no longer are using because we're just not aware that we had these powers at one time. I want you to imagine the most unbelievable scenario you can think of. Imagine a world where we have free energy. Imagine a world where people begin to stimulate and release latent powers within their own bodies, that all of that dead junk DNA in your cells all of a sudden is brought to full power, that you have powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal humans. Imagine that the governments that are running the world become absolutely pointless. That the power that is held by the military becomes non-existent. Or we live in a world where people can feel each other's feelings, feel each other's thoughts, where sickness is eradicated not because of any kind of medicine, but because human beings are completely unified in their own energy, in their own body, and the power of the universe flows through them. I'm seeing here it must be something I'm saying, because I'm seeing the the video getting choppy. Anyway, I'm getting loopy thinking about it. So when I get really loopy into the ethers, I have a hard time speaking in human words. So I just want to give you an opportunity to imagine that world. Not the kind of world that we've been in where the small percentage of human beings, because of their, they practice some spiritual technology, or they live in a monastery, or they're special and gifted and they have all of these spiritual gifts. What if we lived in a world where everybody, that was just normal? Like being able to walk on two legs. It was just normal to be at that level. And how would you handle that? Now, I'm going to be honest with you, because I believe this is coming. And the more that I allow myself to see it and accept it, I can't tell if it's exciting or frightening. I can't tell which one it is. So I'm going to share some things today that this isn't just necessarily my feeling. If you've been feeling it, like if you've been feeling a lot of anxiety lately, if you've been feeling a lot of tension building up in your body, a lot of emotional tension building up, maybe even having some strange dreams, I think that we are headed towards that, a massive, perhaps instantaneous or seemingly instantaneous shift. But in order for that to happen, we have to want it. We have to be willing, and we have to be desirous, and we have to ask for it. That is the best way. That this is something that we bring into existence with our desire and our consciousness. And so I want you to be willing to drop. Let me ask you another question before I go any further. Imagine that world. That world where human beings have that kind of power. And then I want to ask you, think of all the petty little things that drive you crazy today, the things that you're really bent out of shape over. Little things like, you don't have, it's not necessarily little, but in the grand scheme of things, you don't have enough money for rent. You don't have the this, you don't have the that, you don't have and life isn't going the way you want. And think about all the things that you want to feel whiny and complaining about. And imagine a world where none of those limitations are there anymore. And you look back on that and you go, yeah, remember last week we were worried about getting the rent, and now we don't have to pay rent to anybody because we all live in this awareness that money has never existed. There's no such thing. It's just a concept. Wealth, money, status, these are all concepts that we use that kept us in the dark. So, according to Vedic understanding, there's a couple of different thoughts on this, and exactly how you calculate them, but there are things called yugas. So yugas are large time periods. And you've heard that there's a golden age, and then there was an age of darkness. You've heard of that, Satya Yuga, Kali Yuga. And Kali Yuga is when I think it's 75 or 80% of the population is completely blind to the spiritual world. And there's the yuga calculation that I follow. See, there's two. There's one that says that the yugas were like incredibly super long, hundreds of thousands of years, and they say that we're still in Kali Yuga, and it's going to last for another, and just these unbelievably large chunks of time. And then there's another school of thought about the yugas, which say the yugas last about 25,000 years. And so, or is it 12,000 years? I can't remember which. Not nearly as long. But in any case, that particular calculation of the yugas, and I got a video about it. If you dig through, you might be able to find it, where I actually read from the research. But the Kali Yuga, the Age of Darkness, according to that calculation, was during the Middle Ages, during exactly when the Age of Pisces, we came into what is known as the Age of Pisces. The Age of Pisces, what is the symbol of Pisces? It is the fish. In fact, Pisces, Pisces, is the exact same word. In English, it's fish, because Germanic languages turn P's into F's, and the SC turns into an SH. So Pisces becomes fish. And that was the symbol for Christianity. Christianity came in seemingly out of nowhere, created this extremely authoritarian rule where during the Age of Pisces, when Christianity came in, maybe you don't know this, but in the Library of Alexandria, the scientists there had already calculated the circumference of the earth. They knew that the world was round, all the things that science magically figured out later. And Christianity came in and said, no, burned all of those books, killed all of the scientists, called them witches. And then we went into an age of darkness. During that age of darkness, literally, people ate their own feces. Literally. If you look at how people lived back in those days when there were castles and you had the lords, you had to live near a castle somewhere, otherwise, you would get mowed down by some bandit or something. So you had to live by, near some castle with some lord, and so you earned your keep by growing crops, something like that. You worked the land for the Lord, and the way you fertilized all of that was with your own feces. And so that's why when you hear about it, it's a stereotype, but it's true. The peasants in the Middle Ages would sit there with their bowl of slop, because you had to take the vegetables and you had to boil it. You had to boil it so you could get rid of all of the bacteria and everything from your own feces. And then you could eat it. So they would sit there and they would eat porridge and slop, and it was a really horrible time to live. And that was at the height of Christianity coming through the world, and it was so difficult to have your own thoughts that if you even tried to read the Christian Bible in your own language, you'd be burned alive or you'd be skinned alive, because the church wanted to have all the control. They didn't even want you to know what the Christian Bible said. This is the age of Pisces, the age of the fish, the age of Christianity. And so the age of Pisces, the Kali Yuga, the age of Kali Yuga, officially came to an end during the Renaissance, when all of a sudden you started seeing the people starting to look more towards humanism. They started looking more towards Greek philosophy and Norse paganism, and they used that as they didn't become pagans. Of course, there were secret people doing, secret kind of magical stuff. But people started to change and started to awaken. Awakening is another word for that period. In terms of the age of Aquarius, according to some calculations, we entered the age of Aquarius, guess when? 2012. 2012. 2012 is significant because there's also some belief that way the heck back in ancient Mesopotamia, thousands of years ago, 4,000, no, what am I saying? Like 6,000 years ago. Way back in Mesopotamia, that there was some kind of technology that was given to them by the, quote, gods, unquote. And this technology gave people the ability to see into various timelines. You could look into the future and see various timelines. And for the people who had all of the power, who had this ability, they could see how they could precipitate specific timelines that were favorable to them having all of the power. And their ability to do that lasted until 2012. And that's called you can look it up, I forget what it's called. It's called somebody can remind me of it. Again, I can't think very well when I get this loopy. But this piece of technology that was used has been used by the powers that be, the elite, to be able to manipulate world events, such as, if you want to talk about World War I, all you have to do is assassinate some Prussian royalty guy, and that'll start World War I. And then you can manipulate that. You can sell arms to both sides and manipulate that so that you have more power. And then doing things like bringing Hitler to power, World War II, things like nuclear bombs, Nagasaki, things like the AIDS epidemic, 9/11. These, I believe, have all been orchestrated by people who were able to see how, if they manufactured world events, we would be pushed into timelines that they could profit from. And they started, every time that they, as time was going on, they would look further and further in the future, and then there was one place they couldn't get past. And they saw that beyond that spot, that human beings achieved an absolute magnanimous shift in awareness, where they entered into an age of enlightenment beyond what they could have understood. Technology and awareness, psychic abilities, things like that, and an enlightenment, an awakening. And no matter how hard they tried, I think it's called the Looking Glass Project. You can look that up. I think that's what it's called, the Looking Glass Project. No matter how hard they tried to look at all the different permutations, no matter what timelines they tried to imagine what they could do to create it, whenever they hit 2012, it just disappeared. And they entered into this new age of enlightenment. And so, of course, we're not in 2012. It's 2022 now. It's been 10 years. But the Mayan calendar said the same thing. We thought it was the end of the world, but it wasn't the end of the world. It was the end of the world. So let me give you the definition of the word world in English. It's a great definition. The word world comes from two Germanic words, which is broken up into wer and old. So W-E-R is the first word, and the second one is A-U-L-D. And lots of times the old-timey way to spell old is A-U-L-D. So wer old means an age of man. So the world isn't the world. The world is a man age, a human age. When you think of the world, it's not, because there are people on this planet that don't live in our world. There are still tribes that have yet to be discovered in places around the world that haven't bought into our projection of what we believe reality is. And that's what the world is. The world is what human beings agree upon. Our collective unconscious of what we believe is possible or impossible. Let me give you another example of how your projection creates your world. And we're coming into a very similar, now that I'm thinking about it, this is incredibly similar. I'm keeping some details out because I'm just personally not ready to talk about them yet. But before the English set foot on the continent of America, or in certain parts of America, as you know, there were Native Americans that lived there. But the English and European ships would go up and down the coast. So, they had shipping lanes that they would go up and down the coast, even though the people that lived there didn't even know that there were these Europeans that were coming. And what they would do is they would look out onto the ocean and they would see these strange waves. And this is I can't remember where I saw it. Again, I'm very bad at taking notes when I research stuff. But this is documented. So the Native Americans in those places, I think it was along the East Coast, might even be where I'm at now for all I know. Along the East Coast, as they're looking out on the ocean, they would see these waves. Like the ocean was calm, but there was these waves that was something was going through the water, and they would look at it and they couldn't figure out what was going on. Well, as it turns out, there were ships. But because they had never seen European sailed ships before, it hadn't even dawned on them that these kinds of ships like that existed. Because they didn't have that within their brain literally just wiped it out. Just didn't see it. Saw the waves on the water, but couldn't see the ship that was right in front of them. And then slowly but surely it was like the fog would lift it, and then they saw these huge ships, which for them would be like us seeing, some giant alien craft coming down. It would be it literally was that to them. Their whole entire universe changed as a result of the arrival of Westerners, not in a positive way. But that's where we're at. We're at a place where there are powers and entities and beings of all kinds that are not just symbolically in our mind. The ascended masters, beings of tremendous power that are right here with us. We just can't see them. We can't see them because we can't imagine it. But, look, this may not age well. I don't know. Maybe in a year or two, I might eat these words. Maybe, who knows. But I think it's very possible we are about to enter a stage where, we've already experienced it, with the current thing that's been going on for the past couple of years. So we still have remnants of that time before we de-evolved. So there was a time when we lived in a golden age. And a golden age where we didn't need a lot of the stuff we have now. When you think about it now, we think we live in a highly technically advanced civilization. But the truth is that we're just a stone's throw away from being a caveman. The cars that we drive, we use electricity, we use all these kinds of things, but the truth is that we're just barely, we've barely gotten past, learning how to start fire. In terms of, what can be accomplished in terms of technology, we're really just almost nowhere. And you think now what we have is really amazing, but if I go back to when I was a kid, when I was born, I was born in the 60s, If we look at the technology we had then, it looks so primitive. And when I was born, if people looked 60 years earlier to 1900, the technology people had then looked so primitive. We're still extremely primitive. So anyway, so we lived in a time, according to the ancients, where we lived in a golden age where we didn't even have to communicate. We could just communicate with thought. That we had access to all kinds of ways of using energy and gravity to lift things, carry things, cut things. The pyramids, no matter what science says, they still really don't know how the hell they did that. And the precision that it took, the precision to cut those stones, at least according to some people, they make a pretty good argument that, those were machine cut, at the very least. And there's a lot of evidence to say that the pyramids aren't as young as we've been told. We've been told that the pyramids are something like 6,000, 4,000 years old. But we've now found megalithic structures in different parts of the world that date back to 25,000 years. And I heard something very interesting about what the pyramids really are. In fact, still to this day, if you're able to go to the top of the pyramid, the Great Pyramid, and there's a thunderstorm, the lightning gets attracted to that, and there's a beam of lightning that comes out of there. If there's enough electricity in the air, energy comes out the top of that thing. And that underneath the pyramids was actually waterways, because the Nile used to be right there at the foot of the pyramids. And so there were waterways that went underneath the pyramids, and actually the pyramids were not buildings, they were an energy generator that I don't even know if we know what exactly they did. And we're talking, there's evidence to say that these could have been 25,000 years old. Really, really been around for a really long time. What's interesting is around that same time in Europe, we see the indigenous people there do all of the wonderful cave paintings that we know of now. And there's one specific one that had been used as a spiritual place of power for 10,000 years. And then there was a landslide that covered it over. And it wasn't until 1990 something that some hiker found it and got in there and found this huge cave system with all of these paintings on it. What's interesting about that is that those paintings don't have any humans. There's no humans depicted there. It's all animals. And so my take on it is that was seen as the womb of the earth, and they went there to worship the mother goddess, who from inside that cave gave birth to all of the animals, gave birth to them. It means that those people didn't see themselves as humans. They saw themselves as spirit caretakers, because there's no representation of people on that, only the animals. And so they saw the animals as they're carrying their torches. They saw the animals coming out of the walls of the cave, and that's what the paintings are. They're in the womb of the mother. And right around that same time that cave was covered over with a landslide, the pyramids were being used. And they were being used as an engine to, through the pyramids, what they would do is they were sending out energy waves that covered the whole planet. It was an energy generator that covered the whole planet. And this is what Tesla was figuring out. One of the reasons why all of Tesla's work has been lost, and now people say that he was a nutcase, which, I mean, he apparently had some issues, but all of his work is gone, is because Tesla was figuring out what the pyramids really were. And it wasn't an energy generator like we think of now. It was an energy generator, among other things, that created a bubble around the earth. It created a wereold. And it was protecting the consciousness of people because they were trying to prolong this age of, this golden age of spiritual complete empowerment, because they knew that that age was coming to an end. So they're trying to preserve it. And so when you look at the pyramids now and you see these big giant rocks, and all of all of the stones that used to make it all flat and perfect are all gone, and they're ruins. And inside there's all these weird passageways, and nobody knows what they mean, except that, when you look at a certain passageway out, you can see a very specific star constellation, especially if you go back in time, and that the Sphinx is lined up with Regulus, the star Regulus, which has a direct connection to the ancestors. If you want to know the door to the most ancient ancestors, it is Regulus, Leo. If you're a Vedic astrologer, it's Magha, the constellation of Magha. That is the dwelling place of the oldest ancestors. The ancestors that came before humans. The ancestors that came from who knows where. Before there were humans, there were still these beings of light, who we call the ancestors. We call them the elves, we call them the bodhisattvas, we call them the star people, depending on where you come from. We call them all kinds of different things, but these are shining beings of light that are the progenitors, not just of the physical humans, but they are the progenitors of the spiritual consciousness of humans. It's where we came from and where we will go. And the Sphinx, the Egyptian head that they got on there now. If you look at it, that head doesn't fit. That's because it used to be something else. It was a head of something else. Might have been a lion, might have been something else. But what happened is whichever pharaoh it was wanted to have his own face on it, so they defaced it and they turned it into what you see now. So at that time that those people in Europe were preserving, because their understanding was that they were going to lose their connection to Mother Earth. And so they wanted to preserve all of the animals. And as it's turned out, a lot of those animals are no longer around. There was a shift and, a lot of those animals died off. So what I'm trying to say is that we are heading back in that direction. The Age of Aquarius started in 2012. The elites who use this technology to see into the future so they can manipulate world events, create tragedies that create fear in people. That's what it comes down to. Starting wars, terrorist attacks, plagues. All those things are designed to get human beings filled with fear so that then they can consolidate their power and control them and then use us like the cattle that they want to use us as. And their time has come to an end. It's over. It ended in 2012. And technically we entered the Age of Aquarius, according to some people, in 2012. But ages are like the seasons. When you pass from winter to spring, it's not like one day it's snowing and freezing cold, and then the next day it's warm and it stays that way. No, it vacillates. It goes up and down. As winter is turning into spring, it'll warm up, and then winter will come back, and then spring will come up, and it's sort of like, they're moving into each other's house. And so winter comes back and gets, the rest of her stuff. I'll be back later. I'll pick up the other stuff later. And spring walks in with, his stuff and says, okay. But then he's got to go back to his place and get his stuff. And so it's hot, it's cold, it's hot and cold. And then it finally settles down into whatever season you're in. So that's where we're at. We've been bouncing back and forth, up and down. There's been revelations and awarenesses. We've gone backwards, seemingly really backwards. But those are the last gasp of winter. Last gasp of the age of Pisces, as it dies and makes way for the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. Those of you who think Saturn is the evil one, you're wrong. Saturn is karma and is justice and is balance that you worked for. And when you go into the age of Aquarius, it is an age where you have worked off all of your karma. And you now live the benefits of all of your hard work. And in the age of Aquarius, there are no leaders. That's why we're going through a stage where gurus are becoming less and less desirable. People don't want to worship gurus anymore. And I'm technically a spiritual teacher, but as you know, I've made it very clear, I am not interested in that. Even if I was, I couldn't be. I'm just like you. I'm just somebody who's, trying to make my way through this crazy life. And any teacher who says otherwise is either a con man or deluded or both. So run from anybody that doesn't freely admit their humanity or allows their followers to turn them into something other than just being a human. Run from those teachers as fast as you can. We're coming into the age of Aquarius where people are self-empowered. They are individuated, meaning they have no external locus of power. What was I saying about during the Middle Ages? You couldn't function if you didn't live beneath the castle of some lord. You had no way of functioning. You couldn't live. Now we're entering the age of Aquarius where you are your own lord. You are completely individuated. You have no external locus of power. There's nothing outside of you. That's why you have to drop all of the fear. You have to drop it, because fear, in case you don't know it, all those of you who take so much pleasure in your unverifiable conspiracy theories. There's a difference between something you can verify and something you can't. Bear in mind, the conspiracies that I'm seeing actually are indicating we are headed towards freedom. It's an indication that freedom is coming. And I'm not afraid. When I talk about the elites that are controlling this and all that stuff that now I'm owning up to that I didn't believe in a year ago, I'm not saying it with any fear. I'm saying it with excitement. It means that, if there really is this elite cadre of, 1% that's running the world and has technology far beyond what we can imagine, which we're starting to see now. I mean, they can't even hide it anymore. The things that they're doing with medical treatments are showing, levels of technology that we couldn't have even imagined existed, but they have a lot more. They've got a lot more than that they're trying to release on us. But if that's the case, then imagine the spiritual side of it, because the physical side is that the human beings that are running this globe, this global corporatocracy, have levels of power, and we might even say magic and technology, far beyond what we could have imagined. But that's on the physical level. So imagine that same revelation of power on the spiritual level. That's what all this stuff is about. You want to get a head start in it? Go up here. In fact, if you want the best, combine this with this. I'm going to start talking about that more and more as I get more and more comfortable talking specifics. I'm not quite ready to do that yet because I'm still having a hard time comprehending what I'm seeing, what's coming to me, and as I get a little more fearless about it, I'll bring you along with me, if you're not already there. So that means if the revelation that we are now seeing, by the way, just as an example, the Pentagon, the most powerful military in the world, where the deep state military resides, the CIA, is now publicly confirming that there are extraterrestrials that are visiting our planet. They haven't said anything more than that, but they're releasing classified films to mainstream media. Mainstream media is saying, so the Pentagon just said that we have extraterrestrial vehicles flying around our military craft. That's as much as they're saying. But I want you to think about what that means. I won't say anything, just think about the significance of that. At the very least, it's a revelation that there are things going behind the scenes that now are being brought to light. And they're rolling this information out slowly. You don't see it. It's sort of like turning up the heat on your bathtub just slowly. You don't realize it. It's a few degrees warmer, but you didn't notice it. Because if they just turned it up all the way, you'd scream and jump out of there. They're making sure you don't flip out. Now, imagine that level of shift of awareness, but on a spiritual level. The beings that have only been beings of mythology. And this, again, I've shared this before, but I find this absolutely titillating. And maybe I should go and visit one of these places. But in Scandinavia, where is it? In Iceland. In Iceland, it is still the law that if they're going to build a road or you want to build a house or something, and there's these big, granite rocks there, the government says you first have to get a shaman out there to do rituals or meditations to see if there are any elves living in those rocks. And if the shaman comes back and says, yes, there are elves living in those rocks, you have to build the road around those rocks. You can't level them. Imagine living in a world where that's just everyday life. Oh yeah, the elves live over there. Oh yeah, there's some little people, there's some leprechauns there. You got to be careful with those guys. They'll steal your apples if you're not paying attention. Yeah, the other day I was walking at the beach and I saw this extraterrestrial craft, and I waved at him and he sent me this knowledge I had been wanting to get. I got to ask him next time I see. Remind me next time we see a UFO. Can you remind me to ask them to tell me how to do that one meditation? What if you lived in that world? Oh yeah, you remember the government? Oh yeah, I remember that. Remember the CIA? And then you kids are like, what's the CIA, mommy? Oh, way back then there was this thing called the CIA, and they controlled us. Oh, that sounds horrible. I know. Yeah. Oh, hey, look, there's an elf. What if you lived in that world? Again, we'll see how this video We'll see if this video ages well or not. But what's the harm in being willing to go there? If that exists, let me just say that. If that world exists, it's only going to exist to the extent that you're willing to allow yourself to see it. Because it's a huge shift. It's exciting, it's frightening, and it's a total, you're going to have to drop all of your complaining. And let's face it, we love to complain. We love to complain about who's doing what to us. We get off on our rage. We get off on our victimhood. We get off on those damn taxes. And that's right, that war in Ukraine. And look at how high the gas prices are. Damn it, where is Trump when we need him? The election was stolen. I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm just saying we love to complain and victimize ourselves. What if you didn't have to do that? Just meditate on that. The more that you become open to that and then get to the place where without fear and without intensity and without desperation, without any of that, you can comfortably say to the universe, I'm open to live in that world. Empower me to raise my energy level so that I can live in that world. That's what I'm going to do. If you want to come along with me, you can. And I am now, as I have been, I'm using these techniques to talk about it. And I'm going to start sharing by the way, if you're one of the Mao Shan practitioners, there's a final there's a final set which will take your footwork to the next level. And when you understand how to do the real Mao Shan footwork, it changes everything. And I'll leave it at that, but we'll talk more about that. So anyway, if you haven't already, please subscribe. The Warrior 90-Day Challenge, the Lightning Qigong. You can subscribe at whatever level you want. You can learn the mastery of shamanism. We'll start talking more about runes and how to bring runes into all of this, how we can open up wormholes into the universe using runes. And of course, you've already been doing the Awakening the Immortals Qigong. Anyway, I'm excited. I'm excited and scared about what's coming. But anyway, there's that. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer your questions. This is a question and answer. Please write the word question in all caps. And ask your honest question or share your honest feeling. Or if you don't want to follow my instructions, then of course I might get upset, and we don't want that. So let's take a look and see what we got here. We've got Vincent.thunderwizard.com, who is one of my Vedic astrologers. So if you want to learn the perfect mantra for yourself, that is based on your specific vibration that you were given at birth, he is somebody that can share that with you. He's got a bunch of other things he can share for you. You can go to Vincent.thunderwizard.com. Vincent.thunderwizard.com. And of course, you've got Thundra Staves Rangel. She says hello too. You can check her out at Thundra.thunderwizard.com. She is a lightning goddess in her own right, and she is also a Vedic astrologer as well as other things that only she can do. She's a very powerful shaman herself. If you want me to do for you what I just did for them, you can go to lockdown, LOCKDOWN.thunderwizard.com, and if you take that tremendously discounted course and you pass the very simple test, I will do that same for you. I'll give you a web address on my website, and if you say hello during the live stream, I will advertise your website. All right, is that it? Any questions? Looking Glass Project, yes, thank you. I did remember that. Sue Hobble. So you figured it out later. You have to write the word question. You said, have you ever met an Anunnaki? So I don't know if I have or not, but I welcome you to the channel because, as you know, I don't talk about Anunnaki on this channel. So I encourage you to ask me questions about what I teach. Okay? Spend some time knowing what I teach so that you have something that will inspire me. When it comes to Anunnaki, the truth of the matter is that they're... See, here's the thing. As you know, I'm a big fan of Carlos Castaneda's work. However, Carlos Castaneda is a fraud. He made that stuff up. He either stole it from other people or made it up. But it doesn't change the fact that he was a genius that brilliantly channeled information from the Ascended Masters. And most of his practices are brilliant. And most of his teachings are brilliant. Not all of it, but most of it. So just because somebody is a fraud and doesn't know what they're talking about or is operating out of their own narcissism or fear doesn't mean that they can't be used as channels. This whole Anunnaki thing, when you say Anunnaki, the assumption is you're talking about space travelers who came to the Earth and created human beings, and they used the names of the Anunnaki. Now, the truth is that the Anunnaki is just simply the mythology of Mesopotamia. And what happened is somebody misinterpreted that and projected their own alien invasion stuff. Now, but the truth of the matter is that was necessary because it opened us up to the idea that we might very well find out to be true, which is, are human beings, did we really just evolve out of the soup? Were there civilizations already in existence that had a hand in our creation? These are good things to talk about, but it's been taken over and turned into this fear-based, nonsensical garbage. So I appreciate the question. The truth is the Anunnaki has nothing to do with what you've been told. It is just the mythology of the Mesopotamian, early Mesopotamian people. And it can be interpreted exactly the same way as any other mythology, whether it's Norse or Greek or Vedic. But the question that you're wanting to ask me is, have I ever met an extraterrestrial? The answer to that question is, I don't know if I have or not. I talked about what might have been an experience, but the thing about it is, they are living on, because of our blocked vision, they're on the other side of the veil. So unless somebody is either chosen or highly aware, it's unlikely we will remember our interactions with them. And there's also the false flag operations, which is, that whole Anunnaki mythology that's thrown out there is a false flag operation. It's designed to make you afraid. It's designed to give you fear. That whole reptilian thing and all of that is a false flag operation. I'm not saying reptilians don't exist. I'm saying that they are a deep state cover story. And if reptilians do exist, they were created in a human lab. That's my belief today. I might change my mind about it later. But all of that fear-based nonsense you've got to drop. Because the next false flag operation is that reverse engineered flying saucers that are created and used by our government to frighten us. By the way, all of the abductions, my personal belief is abductions where people are abducted and they are experimented on, those are actually done by deep state military, human military. It's not, I don't believe that it's extraterrestrial. I don't believe that in a civilization that advanced with the kinds of powers that they have would, after they've brought you into their ship would then pull out some dirty razor blade and start cutting into you and put really crappy little, not little, but giant clunky things in you that you have to dig out at the doctor's office later. I mean, the level of incompetence. It shows somebody who's got they've reverse engineered some stuff, and then the other stuff they have no idea what they're doing, and they're really experimenting on implants. So this happened way back in the 80s. That was when you hear about if you notice that, you don't hear a lot about it now. But in the 80s and the 90s, you heard a lot about people being abducted and being experimented on and being implanted and going to the doctor, and the doctor's pulling out these weird things out of their body and stuff like that. And now what do we have now? We now know that the powers that be, even the ones that let us know, they have the ability to put tiny little transmitters in us where they can track us. You don't need one of those big clunky things. They were experimenting. It was humans that were experimenting on us, and they were using some reverse engineered technology from down spacecraft, and they were using modern technology, and that's why it has this weird combination of really high tech and then really low tech all at the same time. That's my personal belief. Maybe there's some abductees that will take offense to that, but that's my personal belief about that. So that's what your question about the Anunnakis really represents. So I want you to drop all the fear associated with that, because that's not at all what's coming. Sue Hubble question: is it dangerous to pass through the top of pyramids? I want you to drop anything having to do with fear. I don't know. Do you have the ability to pass through the top of a pyramid? I don't. So how relevant is this question? Ask me a question about something that you are going to do in your life today. I have no plans on passing through the top of a pyramid. I don't think you do either. I want you to ask me questions that will help me give you down-to-earth tools and advice that will help you have a better life today, not stuck in your head about stuff that you can't do anything about. People have reported weird behavior on people standing on there. Some of them think Jesus has chosen them, or pyramids, portals. Those are all great questions. I don't have the answer to that. That's not a question. So Afrian Khan, if you have a question, write the word question. And again, ask me a question that I teach based on your question, which is really loopy. To me, it has nothing to do with what I teach. So spend some time on my channel, ask me about stuff I teach. Better yet, do the exercises. There's a reason why I have pictures of me 12 years ago doing all this funky dance over here, because I'm trying to tell you it's all about turning you. We're talking about how the pyramids are these energy portals. Your body is an energy portal. That right there, the heaven and earth meditation is, in my experience, one of the top 5 most powerful things you can do to turn your body into a portal of energy. So get what's being handed to you. That right there, that practice, 10 or 20 years ago, you would have had to pay thousands of dollars and jump through a bunch of hoops to get somebody to teach you something like that. I'm throwing it away for free. Take it and use it. Stop worrying about things that you don't have access to. Use the stuff you do have. In fact, I challenge all of you who haven't done it, who are just on here because you got nothing better to do, you spend time on my channel, you don't do the work, do that meditation. Heaven and earth meditation. Do it every day for a month. And then I dare you to tell me that nothing happens. I dare you. Won't cost you a cent. I've given it out for free on the channel. Get off your rear end and go find it. It's on my channel. If you look for it, you'll find it. You can find it in the playlists. It's that easy. I've made it that easy for you. Olivia Rackley question: when I do the Qigong practices now, I do not feel the life force energy at all anymore, even though I am making sure to do everything properly. Have I reached a plateau? This is an interesting question. Now, I have said, as I said yesterday, definitely I do this stuff to get energy. I do it to get a physical sensation. It gets me stoned. I get high off of it. And but that's just a physical sensation. That doesn't have any meaning other than that. So you will go through periods where, as your body is getting used to the energy, you're going to feel it a lot. In fact, every time that I learned a new set, because there are more sets than what I've put here, every time I learned a new set, I would almost pass out. The energy would be so intense that I couldn't get enough breath. I'd have to keep breathing because my energy body was pulsating and trying to pull as much oxygen into my cells as possible. And then I would get used to that, and then it would feel really good, and then finally I'd get used to it. So what it means is that you have reached a level where your meridians have all unclogged and opened up, and so now the energy is flowing freely. But just because you don't feel it doesn't mean it's not there. In fact, the times when I have emitted the most energy, at least some of the times, I haven't felt anything. In fact, right now, I know that if I just barely tap somebody with the kind of energy that I have, there's a possibility, that I might put them in a whole other place. But I don't feel anything. So don't let that deter you. It's just like, if you go to the gym, right? First few times you go to the gym, you get home, you're sore as hell. You know that you did something and your muscles are responding. But after a while, you get to a level where you go to the gym and you're not sore anymore. You have to push things to the next level, try something new. So I would, if you want more experience, if you want more feelings of that energy, then you can bump up your meditations. But you can also just enjoy that, you're not on a roller coaster ride. Because as you know, you do this practice and you all kinds of stuff. So your spirit or the universe might just be giving you a little break. Look, you've made you've reached a powerful plateau. Enjoy it, relax and enjoy it. Don't because if you've hit a plateau, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get another one, and then another one. If you want to have the experience that she's having, go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe. Suhabol, all right. So it's guys talking to each other here. Jedi Black Knight question: do the Mao Shan sets also have mirror versions? Yes. If you're talking about, first, are you talking about these? The 5 element sets? Yes. Each of them has a mirror in it. But then there are sets beyond that, which are like, if you've done these and you feel the power of these, the ones beyond that, yeah, anyway, we'll save that for another time. Short answer, yes. Undoctrinate with Jeff Doherty. So it's helpful if you write the word question in all caps, and then you figured it out later. Would you say what would you say makes your Qigong ideal? So, I've talked about that quite a bit. But if you haven't heard, let me explain it to you. To my knowledge, to the best of my knowledge, I didn't realize this until just recently. But to the best of my knowledge, I believe I'm the only person in history to be teaching a unified energy system. There's Qigong, which is life force energy associated mainly with the navel center. The navel center, there's a reason why even in my Qigong, I tell people to put your hands over your navel, and you see me doing it here. I'm about to put my hands in front of my navel. See, here I come, I'm right there. My hands in front of my navel. That's because the navel is where the body takes all of life force energy and then digests it, so that your body can handle it. It sends it to wherever it needs to go. That's Qigong, that's life force energy. Then there's Kundalini. Kundalini is a totally different energy system associated with the spinal column and the chakras and awakening to psychic awareness, which is what brings us human beings to the level of fully aware. Our Kundalini has to go up the spinal column, open up the chakras. Most people learn these one at a time. In fact, some people spend their whole life doing Qigong, or, in some lifetimes they spend their whole life doing Kundalini. I've combined these two. I used to be a Kundalini yoga teacher, so I've got some very powerful Kundalini exercises. So I've combined that. That would be enough, except that the Mao Shan practice, which has not been revealed publicly to my knowledge by anybody to the level I've done before me. When I first started learning this, I was given strict instructions not to share it with anybody. And I, in fact, would deny if people had heard about it and they would say, hey, do you do that? And I'd say, no. But the Mao Shan, after doing reverse engineering of my own and meditating and working with the spiritual masters of the sect, I became aware that there's a completely different energy system in the body that is normally dormant. And that is called the heart-mind. And the heart-mind is where the soul is housed. So in order for the soul, which is an infinite point of light, in order for it to live in the human body and not tear a hole through you or tear a hole through space, and also because the soul has no gall in it. There's no lies, there's no hatred, there's no anything like that. So in order to protect the soul from that, there is an energy that every single person has in their body, in their heart center, which is made of pure lightning. Look, there's a reason why when somebody has a heart attack, what do? They put the electric things on them, jolt the heart back to life again. There is lightning surrounding the heart, and that is a feminine power, and it is pure lightning. Sorry, I think I'm losing it here. And so what ends up happening is that this lightning is self-contained because it needs to protect the soul from damage. So in fact, if you've ever gone through a painful divorce, a painful breakup, if anybody, your parents, your friends, if anybody's ever betrayed you or hurt you, and who hasn't gone through that, that lightning is a shield which actually holds on to that trauma and doesn't let it pass through to the soul, because the soul doesn't understand that. There's no such thing. When your soul is out of the body and it's in infinity and it's interacting with other souls, there's no such thing as somebody lying to you or cheating you or betraying you. But everybody's open, and there's no guilt, there's no shame. Everybody is connected. So the soul doesn't understand that. I mean, of course it understands it, but it doesn't operate on that level. So if you're going to be in the human body, then you're going to need this, what's called the Emperor's Bodyguard. That's what the Chinese call it, the Emperor's Bodyguard. Now, people who do acupuncture and acupressure, they know of it. But these guys, they figured out a way to release that energy. And so they came up with very specific movements. I'm doing them here. If you pay attention, I'm doing some of those movements there that actually flip the switches to turn that lightning inside out so it flows through your whole body. And these practices that I teach here at the higher levels are used to fight evil spirits with your bare hands. I cannot go on ghost hunting expeditions because if I walk in, the ghosts will leave because of the energy that comes out of my body as a result of this. So to answer your question, what makes it ideal? There's nobody on the planet, to my knowledge, publicly that's teaching any of this. I don't think there's ever been anybody in the history of the world, to my knowledge, who's ever combined all three of these energies. Because we've been living in a time where these technologies, which may be coming from who knows where, have been given to people and then they've been squirreled away into monasteries. And there's always been an outer court and an inner court. You go and learn from the guru or the yogi or the sifu or the whatever or the And then there's the people who learn the secret stuff. And they perfected it over thousands of years. And then just at the beginning of the 20th century, when you had everything shift around, these knowledge started spreading all over the world. They weren't stuck in their little places. And now you have people learning yoga, which was not done. You have Kundalini yoga. You have all different kinds of deep meditation. You have people like me teaching Vedic astrology and Vedic mantras and rituals. And you had runes were used up in Scandinavia, and now the whole world has access to all of these spiritual technologies. There's a reason for that. And now what's happening, I didn't even mention that I do runes as well. We're bringing all of this energy into a synergistic package. I don't know anybody else that's doing what I'm doing. So to answer your question, that's why I think my system is ideal. But hey, I'm not the only game in town. Somebody else out there has something else. I don't need to be the best. I'm not competing with anybody. Ideal, you use that word. Maybe it's ideal. Maybe it's just a really good system. There's plenty of other good systems out there. So there's my answer to that question. I teach a unified energy system that uses an energy that you won't find. I don't believe you'll find it anywhere else. Unless you're lucky enough to track down one of the few remaining teachers that knows how to, and they're still out there. There's still a few out there who know these heart-mind exercises. But other than that, I don't know anybody else that's teaching it publicly like me. All right, so what else? Life force rejuvenation. Question. Okay, you just need to write the word question in all caps. The rest can be normal. Otherwise, you're screaming at me. Question. What pyramids, in your opinion, are more powerful? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question. It's a great question, but I don't know the answer to it. Jameson's son question. Despite truly hoping for the veil lifting, the more I look around, the more scared I get. See? Well, you are in one of the most, looking at the stuff that's going on in China, and you're right next to it there in Australia. I was in Australia. There's a reason I left. But yeah, I agree with you. Anyway, despite truly hoping for the veil lifting, the more I look around, the more scared I get, seeing the lengths elite will go to keep us down. Is this a fear of a deep-rooted disbelief? Well, there's reason for it, but again, as I said, it's the last gasp of the Pisces, the age of Pisces. It's the last gasp. It's and it's also showing how desperate the elite are, as you know, because you're there in it. They're overreaching hugely. They're seriously overreaching. In boxing, when you overreach, like you miss, you really go to knock somebody's head off and you miss, you're just wide open. That's when you get tagged. So the elites have done that, and they're overreaching, and now they're just wide open to get tagged, and it's because they're desperate. That doesn't mean they're not dangerous. They are. But again, if you follow your soul desire, you'll be safe. So I understand what you're thinking and feeling, but again, the one thing that I can't still, it's hard to really comprehend at my age. When you get to, some of you are younger, maybe you don't know, but I grew up, I was born in the 60s. I grew up. If you were to talk in the 60s or the 70s about the Pentagon publicly releasing classified video of unidentified flying objects and saying, we don't know what these are. These weren't made on planet Earth. That is unbelievable. We're not talking about some third world country government. We're talking about the Pentagon. And nobody's. It just got out there, and nobody's paying attention to it. So that tells me that something's coming up. So anyway, to answer your question, I understand. I guess your question is this fear a deep-rooted disbelief? No, it's we've you're going through the same kind of cognitive dissonance that I'm going through. It's like, did I just hear that? Is that? I'm still in cognitive dissonance over what's happened these past 2 years. The level of authoritarian, all that's. I'm still in cognitive dissonance over that. So, I mean, whatever I thought the world was is gone. It's over. Anyway, I hope I answered your question. Kabar, question. Is this earth plane a map to eternal bliss that has been corrupted by a wise parasite? So again, welcome to the channel. It's really good if you ask me a question about something that I teach. I got to be honest, I don't understand a word you just said. It sounds really deep and meaningful, but I have no idea what it means. So I can't answer a question I don't understand. Sorry. Ben Facey, honest feeling. I feel anxiety, a little fear and excitement as I have had some powerful dreams to do with higher intelligent beings taking those who have done the energy work to another realm. As I shared last time, what I was told about which I took to be legends, which I don't know if it's a legend anymore. The Grand Masters of this tradition, what they would do is they would do these practices, these exercises, and of course they had meditations. The method of holding the 3 ones, which we're going to keep revealing and talking about up here. That one was a central practice which they could achieve what's called becoming a perfected immortal. And the written legends are that when they perfected that method, that meditation, that they would rise up to heaven in the full light of day. In other words, like you just watch them. I don't know if that's symbolic or what the meaning of that is, but I've told you that in this particular tradition, what they would do is that they would die. Now, as I looked into it, there was actually some herbs that they took, which did something like blocked up the organs, so that the energy or the gods, because each one of your organs has a god living in it. I don't know if you knew that, but the deities would be nicely, tucked away inside their organs, and then the body would start to decompose. And I think it was for 30 days that they would, and people would go check on him. Yep, he's still dead. Oh, I can see his heart is beating. And they'd leave him, and then they'd come back after 30 days and they'd open it up and the person would be gone. And then they'd see him. But he would be able to walk through walls and do all kinds of other things. That's in this tradition. There's in other traditions, plenty of other Taoist traditions as well, where there's so much about this, where if you, the guy would meditate for years in a cave, and, there's, at the end of his physical life, as he's meditating in the cave, his apprentice would come and wipe off all the bugs and the cobwebs and make sure that everything was good. And then he'd show up one day and there would just be a pile of clothes, hair, and fingernails. Person moved into another realm. That doesn't sound so crazy anymore. And it makes you wonder. makes me wonder about a lot of stuff. There was a meditation that I did, which I haven't done it in a long time, and I have to look up the specific instructions to do it. But also in your brain cavity. And this may have a connection to junk DNA. As we're told, we have a bunch of junk DNA that doesn't do anything. But I think everything in our DNA, if you flip it on, when all of your DNA strands are lit up and working, you're one of these immortals that phases out of existence and in three-dimensional reality and becomes this who knows what. But I was doing one of these meditations once, and each one inside of your brain, there are places where little deities, supposedly, you pull them in and they come and they take residence in your brain. I know that sounds freaky, but You can look at it all kinds of ways that you're imagining bringing a deity to live in your brain, or are you stimulating and turning on some latent properties of the brain? However you want to look at that. And I was doing that meditation, and I was actually floating through. I was in a altered state of consciousness. I wasn't planning on it, and I was in a dream state where when you're dreaming, you don't really know something's wrong. You're just in the dream. And I was floating through this building, which was my brain, and I'm seeing all these little cubby holes that with drapes in front of them, and the drapes would go back and it would be empty. And then there was a central part where there are supposed to be the 3 ones, the 3 energy centers. And I poked my head in there as I was floating around, and I poked in there, and there were these 3, the best way I can describe it, 3 old fat babies. And they were sitting there and they were having a discussion, and they saw me and they looked at me like, "What the hell are you doing here?" And it scared me so much it woke me up out of the meditation. But that's one of the practices. I haven't done that one in quite a while, but maybe because it freaked me out so bad. But what I'm trying to share with you is that there are levels of reality we haven't even begun to touch. Now, I don't want you to listen to this and then get all desperate to have that kind of crazy stuff happen. That, again, that's not what this is about. Just do the practices. The more that you do the practices, the more you will transform. Okay, what else? Thunderous Dave's Rangel question. If other world entities invited you to go somewhere with them, would you? I don't know. I have no idea. I had a nightmare last night because I'm doing a bunch of research, and the problem is that there's a bunch of frauds out there as well. There's a bunch of narcissists who are trying to make money off of things. And so, you know me, I don't buy into everything. I really examine things and look at things before I'm willing to believe them. And I was watching some guy, I won't even mention his name because I've come to the conclusion he's a fraud, and he was giving out fear. What he was doing was creating fear. And so I went to bed, really thinking about it, and I woke myself up screaming in the middle of the night, "No!" I was having dreams that aliens were doing things to me, but I mean, it wasn't a real spiritual dream. It was a normal nightmare that I woke myself up from. But I imagine, as has always been the case, the spiritual experiences I've had, it's never been weird. It's always felt like this is the way things are supposed to be. The times that I have left, the time I did leave my body and I went to what I believe to be what people would call heaven. The time that I have seen light beings that appeared to me many years ago, that there was no fear during that experience. The times that all these things have happened, sometimes it's been exciting. I've been afraid beforehand to, ask for the experience. But every time it's happened, it's always felt normal. So I imagine if whatever, to this day in Iceland, people talk about being invited into elf houses to drink coffee and eat pancakes. Now they don't know that they got invited into an elf house. They wake up one day and that somebody says, "Hey, you want to come over and have some pancakes?" And they go in and they have pancakes and they talk, and the really beautiful old kind of, cool wooden house. And then they come out of it and then they look back and they say, "Where's the house?" And they point, and it's a rock. It's like a giant boulder. And I swear to God, there was a house there. I had pancakes with the people that lived there. This stuff still goes on. Apparently, unless everybody's making it up, I don't know. So if I were to have that experience, I believe that it would be done in a way where I would know what was going on and I would feel comfortable. Um, if the negative deep state faked abduction guys came, I don't know, but I'm a Maoshan fighter, so there's a pretty good chance they might not want to mess with me because this kind of energy doesn't, demons can't do to me what they do to people who don't have this energy. And by the way, it doesn't matter whether you have this energy or not. If you're connected to your soul, you're safe. Just to be clear. Nobody needs to be afraid of anything. So that's my answer to your question. Let's see, what else? Anything else? Nothing else. I don't see any other questions. All right, so that's it for me, guys. Thank you for showing up. Please remember that you are the most powerful being in the universe. There's no other being in the universe more powerful than you. Everything you can imagine, including all of these beings and entities, they come from you. The best experience I had meditating was when I was meditating and I saw myself like this giant, 150 light years wide, me meditating. And the universe said that the gods are grateful when you invite them in. The gods worship you. You are everything. When you look up into the stars at night, you see yourself. You're looking into yourself. When you look into a telescope, some quasar, 150 million light years away, you are looking deep within your own soul. Everything comes from you. So remember that. Let's see, a couple of questions have come in. Any new books in the works? No, I haven't written any books in a while. I haven't had that mindset. I don't make any money off books, to be honest with you. I mean, I do make money, but it's almost nothing. So, I spend all my time trying to pay the bills. And that's what all of this stuff here is. So the more that you serve yourself by learning these things, the more you help me keep the lights on. And it's because of that I am able to spend all day, sometimes spending hours and hours and hours researching or meditating or thinking about what can I talk about today? How can I help people? So the more support you give me, the better. I appreciate it. Flux Pavilion, honest feeling. I've been really connecting with the Uru's energy doing the Hool breath meditation. It feels great. I know, the Hool breath. I haven't talked about that. So anybody looking to get started, you can do the Hool breath. Type in anywhere, HUUL breath, and I'm sure it'll come up in whatever search, whether it's YouTube or Google or whatever. And I give that to you for free. That's the base meditative practice. Do that, and I guarantee you your life will change. Is that it? Nothing else? Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Mark Grayson. Question, what is the best rune for fighting against evil entities? Any of them. Doesn't matter. Any one of them. Probably if I had to pick one, Thurisaj, because that's Thor's rune, and Thor is a demon fighter. So chant Thurisaj. In fact, here's something that I've done before. If you have somebody in your life that is toxic, chant Thurisaj. Thurisaj, Thurisaj. Just chant that. Chant that every day, and I guarantee you that person will leave. What will probably happen is they will leave of their own accord. They might have a temper tantrum on the way out, but they will leave. You won't have to do anything about it. That's been my experience, and that's because Thurisaj is about boundaries. So when you chant Thurisaj, you are creating your own spiritual as well as psychological boundaries. The runes have a strong psychological component. Baba Junzo, honest feeling, I feel scared that I may not be able to follow my soul purpose after the ascension event. That's just a fear. It's just a feeling. It's okay to have a feeling. A feeling is just that. My ancestors said, those who die in battle go to Valhalla. They didn't say those who are without fear No, he said those who die in battle. That means you can be as scared as you want before you step out into battle. It doesn't matter how you feel. It's the actions that you take. So you're on here. You're taking the actions. If I don't know what practices you're doing, if you want to gain more energy and more awareness and maybe some more self-confidence about that, then step up your practices. Do one of these that you haven't done yet. That's what it's here for. All right. Is that it? Nothing else? Okay, guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you. And remember that if you are here as a human being, it means that you are among the top 0.5% of souls that has the guts and the power to come into this Disneyland of an experience called human life. There are many souls that didn't have the guts that you had, and the gods look upon you with wonder, like, wow. Doesn't matter. You think your life is meaningless, that if you're frustrated, your life isn't what you want. Trust me, compared to all of the other beings out there, they look at you with amazement that you pulled that off and that you're still doing it. So just remember that. Okay, I'm done. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you all very soon. Take care. Take back your soul. This is another transmission from Mahadeva here at ThunderWizard.com headquarters, where you find the world's only unified spiritual energy system at ThunderWizard.com. Get ready, because here I come.